Hi, friends. Welcome to Think Out Loud with me, a chatcast produced, hosted, and humbly offered by yours truly, Natalie Peterson, from my little neck of the woods in northern Colorado to you in yours, wherever and whenever that might be. This digital adventure is an effort to turn years of internal chatter, wondering, silent suffering, and physical and mental close calls into enlightening and empowering conversations with others. Given how many choices you have about how to spend your time, I consider it an honor that you're listening in. Let's get to it. This morning's routine of coffee and reading while the sun broke through was as peaceful and contemplative as usual. I have a carefully curated selection of newsletters and subscriptions that fill my inbox most days that keep me up to date with headlines and inspiration. Today, I found my guest's latest post. As I read it, I began buzzing, like I could literally feel vibrations running through my body. So I pinged her. And guess what? She said yes. Lucky for us all, she's here. She's a return guest. Kimberly Millstone is a writer, artist, and 5D astrologer. She pens Relevance of a Crone on Substack. And I'd like to read to you what she shared this morning that sat me straight up in my seat and has me hungry to chat with her. The post is titled, Who's Your Daddy? As things we counted on to be true continue to prove themselves false, what's a person to do? I'm seeing people all around me changing. And since the institutions we rely on are run by people, those are changing too. I'm finding myself more and more opting out of required actions. And so are employees, family members, neighbors, clients, etc. All those things we count on people to do, ways we expect them to be, are not necessarily being done anymore. In the long run, this will prove to be good as it shakes out things that cannot be sustained. But in this middle time, confusion and disappointment run rampant. We have the option to turn into these disappointments and decipher why these things are important to us in the first place. What expectations do we place on others? What do we think they should provide us? Security? Comfort, ease? The layer below those answers contains the more important question. Why do I expect someone else to provide them for me? This is the uncomfortable landscape we walk into in the new year. Only those brave enough to look themselves in the eye and ask, who's your daddy? Will have a clear understanding of how the year will go. If you're counting on some version of a father to show up and make things all better for you, you're missing the point of this Capricorn season. As the sun inches closer and closer to Pluto in Cap at the 29th degree, exact on January 20th, we're being asked over and over, who or what have you given your power to? No one can make you happy but yourself. No one can love you more than you love yourself. No one can live into your one life or give it meaning, safety, or comfort but you. What framework would you like to explore in the new year that could possibly sustain the way of life your heart longs for? This is all a big experiment. Your life is your laboratory. Your mind poses the hypothesis. Your actions shake out if it's true for you. Some actions may require determination and perseverance. You'll be called on to let go of how you thought you were supposed to act, to try different ways of doing things. You most certainly will be required to open your mind to the new. It's exciting and also daunting, but so worth it in the end. This is Mars in Sagittarius asking you to expand how you do you. What would you like to experience? How would you like to feel? What are some ways you can think of to head in those directions? These are the journal prompts worth exploring as the calendar flips over to 2024. Love your mind. I love your mind and I love your magic. I am so excited to think out loud with you and to have you think out loud with me, Kimberly Millstone of Luna Matri. Welcome to my cast. I am so excited to see you.
I'm so excited to be here with you today and have this wonderful, deep, nourishing conversation that is so present for us at this time in our collective.
Tell me, when you say that, tell me more. What's going on in the world that has us? What's going on in the stars? What's going on in the universe that has us at this place?
Well, There are so many things. Obviously, it's hard to just speak into one facet that is the most important, because they all are. But as I said in my post, as the sun is moving through Capricorn, we're reviewing the structures in our lives. We're reviewing the habits that we have on repeat. We're looking at all the ways that we thought we had a solid foundation and we actually don't. And this is being shown to us in many ways through the people that we're in connection with, because every single person is also doing their own review. And they're making new decisions about what is the most important way to live their life, which invariably will shift everybody's foundations of the way it was always done before, that we can no longer count on. And so what do we do? You know, there are a lot of people who are in a free fall right now that are thrashing and trying to maintain those old ways no matter what. And they're willing to give up so much of themselves just to maintain that status quo. And it's really so important right now that we can flip the script and decide that we are going to be the source of our own security and all those other things that we thought we could count on. Because in the end, we only have control over ourselves, our own thoughts, our own lives. That is the only thing we can control. That's the harsh news, but it's also the very good news, because at the end of the day, you get to choose. You get to decide how you want your life to go. So, wow, use that power wisely.
Yeah, for sure. There's so many things that I want to visit with you about. When you talk about the thrashing, I have these vivid, like that, it's such an instant visual for me. The thrashing against change and the status quo being something, I think, as a word, as a concept, that there's so much packed into that. What is status quo, right? It's there's personal status quo of how you've always done things. There's familial status quo of how, the comings and goings. There's neighborhood, like people, there's homeowners associations that tell you not to leave your trash cans in view, but there's also, self-regulating neighbors that tell you not to leave. So status quo from a micro level all the way up to full global, right? And like the thrashing against these different layers is just fascinating to me. Being able to pull up and out, to be able to even recognize as a person that that's what I'm doing, is not something that's, I don't know the word, typical of us humans, right?
Yes. So the thrashing is indicative of uncomfortable emotions that we are trying to process within ourselves. So part of growing our capacity to embrace change comes from being able to sit with the uncomfortable feelings that come up. And our society has mostly been on autopilot in ways that reduce discomfort. Most of our ways of being are very much about, how do I make things more perfect? That we have these ideals about how things should be. And what we're coming up against now is the realization that that is a false narrative. That is not a way to live our true, authentic lives by trying to match up to these ideals. And when we cannot hold when we do not have the capacity to understand that every other person has their own struggles within that narrative, and we're trying to get them to match that narrative that we still are holding on to in our head, this is when arguments ensue, right? Like we've all gone through the holiday season, and I've heard so many people saying, I don't want to get together with this group, this family group, because everyone has a different idea of how things should be. And it just ends up in arguments. Part of the way through that is being able to release your own expectations of how anyone else needs to show up, and that they need to believe what you believe. And when we can come to that neutral point of just sitting in compassion with an open heart, an open, loving heart, and just understanding that every person is trying to figure out their own narrative and what feels good to them, we can release our judgment, and we can release our need for things to be a certain way with those people. And in that release comes great freedom, great freedom. And guess what? It feels so much better than the thrashing.
Yeah. There is a freedom and a lightness that is, I've been reading some Esther Hicks lately. She talks about Abraham talks through her about the power of emotions, and that our journey is to discover and feel joy, right? And that the lower vibrational emotions are telling us that we are removed from our inner being and our source, and that is indicative. That's a sign to we're off. Even if it's just a slight degree to the left or right, we're off. Society and our culture and even our upbringings, and all in like not ill-meaning raising, and upbringing of those that come after us. We're conditioned to, like you're saying, want things to be easy and to remove anything that feels hard, or to shirk against the difficult. But in sitting long enough to, as you say, just to show compassion and to think through why am I feeling this? What is it there? What's there that I need to sit with, as uncomfortable as it might be, and to understand more and just let be. In yoga, they talk about leaning into a pose, moving further into a stretch, not to pain, but to just the edge of it, to be able to sit with something and sit up against it, so that you feel it, right? And you examine it. And as you get to know it a little better, you can lean in a little bit further, and you can, oh, wow, like I see now what you're talking about. That's what I'm like, the vision that's coming to me is, but it's not second nature, because we're conditioned otherwise, right?
Yes.
It's a remembering. It's not even a new concept to us. We know how to do this, don't we?
Yes. Yes. It's our true essence of who we are, is to live that way. And we've been conditioned out of our true essence. And again, through no fault of anyone. It's just how we knew how to do life on planet Earth up until now. But But now the energies are shifting and changing, and all of that is rearranging itself and begging us to look into new questions and asking ourselves, is this really working? Does this really feel right and true to who you are as a person? And what is so fascinating, the irony is that the thrashing is mostly self-induced. We come to recognize that we are causing our own suffering because of our expectations of the way that we expect other people to be, and the institutions that were providing something for us, but they're no longer doing that. And we came to count on those things. And in the end, what we come to understand is that they were so powerful over us because we were only okay as long as that thing existed. And so we were weak. We were weak in the neediness of that. So what we're doing now is we're having the opportunity to dig deeper into ourselves and say, how can I provide that for myself so that I don't need anybody else to show up a certain way in order for me to stop thrashing and to be okay, just to be okay to be here. And that is something that requires focus. So right now, a lot of the thrashing in the world is because we are choosing to put our focus on all the things that are disintegrating and falling apart. And there's a lot of, teeth gnashing and hand wringing that is happening of, oh, woe is us as a society. Oh, this is so terrible. Everything's going to hell in a handbasket. Well, if it's so hard to look at, perhaps you should turn inside and find where the beauty actually lies. Because it's there. There's beauty there with you every single day, all day long. And when you focus on that inner beauty, then that radiates out from you, and you create the new paradigm every day through your new actions, because your cup is so full of love and beauty and excitement for life that it can't help but change the world. It can't help but ripple out into every person you meet. So this is where our own structures of how we take care of that part of us, that practice that we have every day of coming back to that beauty within us, the love that we feel in our heart for humanity, that structure, when each person has that within them, we have a completely new paradigm to live with. But for now, we're distracting ourselves with the disintegration, and we don't want that. So why are we putting our eyes there? Why are we putting our attention on that? The war, the hate, all those things that feel so awful to us. Why would we choose to feed that energy when we can create peace in our own lives every day with every thought we make, every action we take? And this is how we become powerful. So many people say they feel powerless to change the world and all the awful things they see. You're not. The exact opposite is true. And when everyone owns that within themselves, that's when we start to see massive shifts in consciousness and reality on this planet. It's really important work, and it's the most important thing we could each do.
The conditioning to tell that it takes courage to own that, because if there is no problem that isn't created by the mind, then to truly accept that and to like as soon as I say that, I can, like, we're so programmed to say, well, but he, but she, but that, but this, but, and, but we have the power of focus, and that is very, like, I don't know if I want to say that it's scary to some, if the act of owning that power is scary, if the power itself is scary. But at the end of the day, it's a concept that takes courage to accept as true, because it is against everything that we've been taught. We've been taught to and it's not that we are, the opposite. Because I'm saying what I'm about to say doesn't mean that I'm saying that the opposite is true. So respect your elders. I'm not saying disrespect your elders, right? It's that there is a part of the sentence left out of, respect your elders and take what they're giving you, embrace it as input, and then figure out for yourself what is true for you and leave the rest. That the part of the sentence that's been missing is the part that requires courage to just go ahead and say out loud. Like, it's not saying that you disrespect, the knowledge, or that you want to leave behind everything that has been taught and learned and experienced. It's what you're saying. It's what is in it for me that can make my life even more, light my path, make my life even more fulfilled, and the courage to leave the rest. There's no guilt. There's no nothing there. It just is. No one can make you happy but yourself. I'm curious, when you have these downloads, I know you have them on a daily basis, multiple times a day. I've shared with you before that, I've been on a bus with you and in a room with you, and watched you actually take this information in and take it back out the pen and out your fingers onto paper or onto your computer. And it's fascinating. You are in playing this role as messenger of this kind of download. You're optimistic, right? You're wired with optimism that we have this in ourselves. When you sit with someone, and is it about convincing them of their own courage that they have? Is it like think out loud with me about how I want to leave folks with, what do we do to find our courage? What do we do, when we read something like what you've put in front of us? You say there's journal prompts and this, but like, give me more. I want to leave folks with something that feels actionable, that feels hopeful.
Yes. 100%. I totally agree with everything you just said. And I think for many people, I've been coaching for over a decade now, and many people have hundreds of layers of fear programmed into their minds and their ways of being. And this, I'm not saying this to overwhelm people, because what I'm going to do is I always zoom it down, or distill it down is a better way to say that, into the moment, because this is where our power lies 100% completely. Our power isn't in the past. It's not in the future. We've all heard that. But living in this present moment takes practice, and it requires us to, on a moment by moment basis, to release those micro moments of fear that pop into our heads all day long. And it just really starts with the first step. And we have to not get ourselves too far ahead of ourselves and project into the future. How is this all going to turn out? And for me, my practice is optimism. It's also faith, because faith is the opposite of fear. I don't know how this is all going to turn out, but I choose to be in faith that it's all going to be amazing. Why do I choose that? Because I know inherently most humans on this planet have loving hearts that have been layered with hundreds of layers of fear. And I also know that human beings have an enormous capacity for strength and courage within us, but it takes us proving that to ourselves every single day in those micro moments, shifting our attention away from the fearful thought towards the faithful thought, and towards the thought of what would I like to see instead? What would I rather have? It's also our emotional system is very entwined in these moments, because the fear is this somatic overwhelm that comes over our entire bodies. So it's also about learning how to calm our nervous systems, how to bring in more practices and awareness around, my body has gone into red alert again. What do I want to do about that? Because I don't want to keep going down that pathway. I don't want to continue to keep feeling that way. So in this moment, I have a choice. And in many ways, this becomes our biggest work of our lives. It's this, everyone thinks that it's your paying job. No, this is your most important work that you could do in this lifetime, is taking the time in every moment and figuring out how to find that space for yourself, even if you're at work and you have to go into the bathroom, to take care of yourself in this way and to bring yourself back to that optimistic set point, that way of being in faith. And so every person has to do this in their own way. Things are different things are meaningful for different people. And so there's no one size fits all here, because we're all so brilliantly unique. And it begins with honoring what works for you, what feels right and true and good for you in every given moment, in order to bring yourself back away from fear and into faith. I choose to believe that everything's going to work out for all of us, because why wouldn't I? It's
Right.
that Einstein quote, either you believe everything is a miracle or nothing.
Yep.
And which way you determine your thought process on that, it gives you the reality that you live with. Your reality comes from that thought, right? So it's a basic set point that you can agree with yourself that we're going to go to this set point. I'm going to choose to believe that it's all going to work out. And in every moment, I'm going to figure out how to feel that faith in whatever situation you find yourself in. Many times it's just about being very quiet and sitting still with yourself. There's nothing to do but breathe and come back to your heart. Sometimes you're in a hard situation with another person who's being aggressive with you and projecting their fear onto you, and you have to remove yourself from that situation or that relationship, right? So there's a wide gamut of ways that this plays out for us every day on the planet. But if we know from the very start, when we wake up every day, that that is our goal, and that is what we're going to work on that day, to try to find ways to be more in faith and less in fear, things start to organize themselves around us, and we start to find more and more opportunities to do that. And that energy builds and grows. And this is what all of the planets in our cosmos are currently working on us with. Every transit, every message that comes from the planets through me speaks to these processes and how to empower ourselves in a greater way to live more into this. It takes time and practice, but we can get there. I know we will get there.
Mm-hmm. In your post, you talk about who or what you're giving your power to, and choosing to give it to faith instead of fear. And then, if you're, and you've got to, compartmentalize. It's like, okay, check these boxes for faith, and uncheck these boxes for things that make me fearful. That takes diligence. And I just had a hit around, so many folks think that this is action oriented, that I have to do something. I have to be in motion towards a different direction, when actually the work it takes is mental. It's mindful. That, like you're saying, it's as basic as breathing, sitting still and being quiet and breathing. We're, back to the concept of conditioning. We're conditioned to take action, make this life the best, conquer it, all of the words that come along and the concepts that come along with action, and being on top of your game, and climb that mountain, and, all of it. When so much of our daily life, if we quiet it down and boil it down to some very basic, just being, it's not a secret. There's no secret here.
Mm-mm.
It's beautiful to realize that it's accessible.
Absolutely.
I want to think for a minute on this concept of projection and reality, that we are all projecting our reality onto others in some degree. Back to the concept of thrashing against, status quo is a projection, right? So before we hit record, we were talking about the idea that as humans, that's what we do. We project our reality. But what our expectations of that projection are is what we need to examine. Will you think a little bit more about that with me?
Yes. So I would also call it an agreement. I would call these agreements, these projections, these are ways that we have agreed to all live together as a society.
Mm-hmm.
And when we see someone else breaking that agreement, that triggers something within us that says, hey, wait a minute, they're not holding up their end of the bargain. They're not doing that right? It's a judgment about how things should be done, because we all made these societal agreements and we were taught them from birth. And what we can do within ourselves is when we see these ways that others are breaking those agreements, we can look to ourselves inside of us and think about, well, why does that bother me so much that they're not doing that? Because that's usually when the projection begins. Then we say to them, hey, wait a minute, you're supposed to do XYZ, or don't treat me that way, or don't talk to me like that. This is happening in all different relationships all over the planet right now, right? Because, our husbands or our wives aren't, or our partners or our daughters or our mothers aren't showing up the way a mother should, so to speak, or a husband should, right? Because we've all been taught these agreements about how that looks. And so then we figure, well, they're not doing their part, so then I need to be unhappy now. I need to make this a problem in my head to solve. Well, is that true? Is that true? Do you need that person to do exactly those things in order for you to have a good life, in order for you to be happy? Right? And these are the ways that we start to bring awareness to these projections that other people bring to us and we bring to other people. And again, it's why this is such internal work, because awareness is the beginning of how we start to unravel these habits that we have around these agreements. And when we can sit with it and say, you know what, I could be happy anyway. I don't need you to do that for me to be happy. I mean, those are epiphany, aha moments. Those are the moments when the sky opens and the choir starts singing, right? And they're so small. And most people don't even know they're happening, right? But and that is the most important gift that we give ourselves around happiness, these ways that we show up differently for ourselves in these moments. And then guess what? We don't have to say those things out loud to other people because we've taken care of it ourselves. And all of a sudden, everyone around us doesn't have anything to argue about anymore.
That's crazy how it happens.
It's so simple. We make it so complicated.
We really do. We really do.
Yeah.
On the daily, I can say, I mean, it is practice and it's the breaking of habits, it's the breaking of conditioning and cycles, and gosh, the list goes on and on. But the rewards are there, and the rewards are there as well to be able to turn and look at a situation and say, this feels so much better.
Yes.
And then continue to choose that to create just as much. I mean, holy hell, we've got some unraveling to do, right? And some unwinding of this isn't something that, and I think that's part of the fear, like that of failing at this, air quotes around the concept of just living. This isn't about a right or wrong. It's not about a pass or fail. It is the now, the experience of creating joy in every moment. And I can attest to the power of letting something be and letting something be beautiful, because at the end of the day and the beginning of every day, it takes all of this going as it's going to work exactly as it's working. It takes all of it. It can't. Life is happening in the most beautiful, glorious way, and choosing to believe in its power and its beauty is the gift of the mind, and the gift of us being on this plane and in this form to experience it.
Yes. And so why wouldn't you want to have the best experience you could have? And that's how I ended that post is how do you want to feel and what do you want to experience? That's the only litmus test for being a human being, is if you are able to experience the things that excite you and that make you want to get up in the morning. And it could be so simple. It could be the smallest things. It's just these societal programs that have told us we're a failure if we don't do these, these other crazy things that really have no meaning and no good purpose that I have found in my time here on the planet. So why not unhook from all of that? Why not take your power back and step out of that trap and find a way to make your own meaning, create your own meaning around what life is and what you want to feel and experience.
That's a beautiful thought for as the calendar turns, to think about what, we put so much pressure on ourselves to, it's resolutions, or it's this year I'm going to, do this or that or the other, and I'm not going to this, that, or the other. And to have something as simple as choosing joy and waking each day with an intention of choosing joy is, absolutely something that I can wrap my arms around.
Joy and peace.
And peace.
Allowing yourself to be at peace with what is without judging it, without expecting things to be different. Yeah, that's freedom. That's true freedom.
It is. Yes. Big sigh. If I were in the same room with you, I would give you a hug.
Yes. Ditto, sister.
I do. I adore you. I'm blessed to know you. And I'm tickled that you were available to just jump on this Zoom with me and record for the world to hear. I want to make sure that that folks know, if they didn't connect with you the first time around, that they know how to connect with you this time. You actually offer your magic to people around the world, around this beautiful planet. I'm pulling this up from looking at your website, lunamatri.com. Natal chart readings, astro coaching. Tell me what astro coaching is.
It's really, once you've looked at the blueprint that your soul has given you, which is your natal chart, it's sitting with me and starting to dive into, okay, how do I actually do that? How do I express that into my life in a greater capacity and a bigger way? And just honoring yourself and knowing that it's a process. One reading gets you started, but then the work begins with, okay, now how do I do that? How do I integrate that into my daily life and who I am as a person? And I offer that support for anyone who would like to continue these types of conversations. And honestly, the magic happens just in the awareness that comes through the conversations, because all I'm doing is opening or unlocking a truth within you that you can now live into in a greater way than you were before, because it was hidden, it was dormant. And so that's what these conversations do, and they're so powerful.
Yes, I've had the opportunity to experience a little bit of your magic. I'm hungry for more, but I really do. I encourage folks to be in touch with you, and just even for a taste of what you have to offer, but even more so for just experiencing you as a human and the gifts that you bring. I want to encourage people as well I read your Substack post from this morning, Who's Your Daddy? I love your writing. I love your writing style. It feels like you're speaking, in the room directly. And so folks can Substack is a channel that a lot of folks are moving to, where there's freedom to express, right?
Yes. Substack.com. And my hashtag is relevance of a crone.
Relevance of a crone. I love it.
On there. And yes, it's a wonderful medium. There's an app that you can download, and it offers writers freedom to express without worry of being censored. And it just takes all of that and brings the power back to the writer.
Beautiful. Love it. Thank you all for tuning in and thinking out loud with me and today's guest, Kimberly Millstone with Luna Matri. It fills my soul to share space with you, Kimberly. Thank you.
And mine as well. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, listeners. Please continue to tune in. Keep an eye out for when. And until then, take care of you. Big hugs, big love, and be well.